Welcome to another World Cup fantasy video. Today we're going through the best chip strategy where I'll also provide an alternative, and I'll be discussing all the chips as I did in my how to play World Cup fantasy guide, where that could also answer any other questions you may have about the game. Let's get this video to over 300 likes, and let's also push on towards 17,000 subscribers. We're very close to that, so thank you very much for all your support, and let's get straight into this video. What you can see on screen is the rules section of the World Cup Fantasy website, and I definitely recommend you having a read through them. I have clarified all of the uncertainties and also the confusions left by the rules in my How to Play World Cup Fantasy video, as well as what I'm going to do now, where I provide a brief overview of the chips, starting with the wildcard, which means you can make unlimited transfers to your team, and these changes are permanent. It's not like a limitless in UCL Fantasy or a free hit in FPL, where the changes are for one match day or game week specifically. It's permanent changes to your team. But remember, you get unlimited transfers in match day 1, which is right now, and also in match day 4, which is the round of 16. So you will not be able to play the wildcard in either of those match days. So that leaves match day 2, 3, 5, 6, and 7 as the times to use the wildcard. And now, what is the best time to use it? I think it comes down to 3 match days, with 2 of them being right on my radar. Match days 2, 3, and match day 5. So let's go through them one by one. Match day 2 is a great time to use it because it allows you to focus your unlimited transfers, which you get right now, on building the best possible team for the first match day only, which is essentially like a mini free hit, and then you can wildcard out of it in match day 2 and build a team for the rest of the group stages. Now, there are going to be some potential issues with that strategy, one of them being that you might have matchday 3 in mind when building your matchday 2 wildcard, but things can change, and a lot of the teams and key players that you stack up on, they could already be qualified by matchday 3, so some of them might not be as good picks going into that stage as they would have been when you originally played your wildcard. So things can definitely go wrong with rotation, playing the wildcard in matchday 2, and also you run the risk of getting things wrong in the knockout stages. So for example, you get the unlimited transfers in match day 4 anyway without needing to use a wildcard, but going into the quarterfinals, for example, you might have backed the wrong countries and the wrong players to go through, so you might have a case of a lot of knocked out players and you might not have enough transfers to deal with it. I know you get a lot of transfers going into those later stages, but you might have a lot of knocked out players if you get things completely wrong. So that is also another risk with playing the wildcard so early, including matchday 2 or matchday 3. But speaking of the latter, why would matchday 3 be another good time to use it? Well, the key answer really, and the key word, is rotation. As I discussed before, there could be the case of some nations qualifying already by matchday 3. They might have also a plum fixture, which is a great time for them to rest key players. Maybe they'll bring them off early, or they will sub them and also try some of these rotation players who might be knocking on the door to get that first team start going into the knockout stages. So matchday 3 could be full of rotation. I don't expect it to be as massive as matchday 6 in UCL Fantasy, which we always talk about on this channel, but it could still be a key issue. So matchday 3 could help you combat that, and you could wildcard into a squad full of players and nations that still have something to play for, and the risk of rotation is minimal, if not completely non-existent basically. So matchday 3 is another good time to use it, but I'll be completely honest, I'm looking at either matchday 2 or matchday 5. And why matchday 5? Because once again, you have unlimited transfers in matchday 4, but going into the quarterfinals, you might back the wrong horses, the wrong countries, and the wrong players. So if you play the wildcard even earlier, you lose the opportunity to also build an entire 50-man squad going into the quarterfinals and beyond, because you might not have enough transfers to pretty much make up for what you've lost out on, and you might have a lot of eliminated players, which will be a big issue going into the latter stages. And those around you could be gaining rank and also surpassing you because they may have more players available in their squad whilst you're struggling to field an entire 11. And I wouldn't recommend hits, despite the fact that they are only a -3 in this game compared to a -4 points hit in other fantasy games like FPL and UCL Fantasy, because we only have 7 match days. So I don't think hits are worth it in the grand scheme of things. Of course, there will be the odd exception, but for the most part, I would highly recommend trying to avoid hits and planning your team very well. And the key way to do that is to get your chip strategy absolutely spot on, of course, and there will be some luck going into this, but there are different strategies and different ways to combat all of these boosters and also all of these scenarios and match days. So don't worry about it. This is all going to be covered in this video. Like I said, the wildcard for me, the best time to use it is either match day 2, 3 or 5. And if I had to slim it down to 1, it would probably match day 5 at the moment, but it's really close between 5 and 2, especially in my own situation. Of course, I think a lot of you will favor match day 2, and that's completely fine. And I might even swing the other way as well, because I will be doing even more research, and also with my subsequent drafts I will then find out, am I really just building for match day 1 and then I'll wildcard out of it match day 2, or will I go about things differently? So it's going to be really interesting to see. Match day 2 or 5 for me are the absolute best times to use the wildcard. I want to highlight a few other things about the wildcard before moving on to the other boosters. So if you decide to wildcard in match day 2 or 3, you are eliminating the chance of rolling over transfers, and you'll only be able to do it in one match day during the group stages. So in match day 1, unlimited transfers, you can't roll transfers over, of course. Going into match day 2, let's say you wildcard in match day 3, match day 2 will be the only time you can roll over a transfer. So you have 2 free transfers going into each group stage match. By only using one, you will then be able to add or stack up another one. So you'll have free transfers heading into the next match day. So bear that in mind, and I don't think this will be a key thing. A lot of us will be using all of our free transfers at our disposal, and you can only roll over a transfer in the group stages. So this is identical to UCL Fantasy. Once again, you can only use it in the group stages. You can't roll over transfers in the knockout stages where we get more free transfers anyway. So bear that in mind. It's not a really big point, but if you are looking to possibly roll over transfers, wildcarding in match day 2 or 3 eliminates one match day from the possible 2 where you can roll over transfers. Remember, you can't roll over in match day 4 because we get unlimited transfers, and then going forwards you also will not be able to do so. Now, the other key point about wildcarding in match day 5, for example, and another key reason why I'm looking to do it myself at the moment, is because you are also enabled to target some of these players and nations in match day 4, the round of 16, where you might not fancy them to go through, but you think they have some really good fantasy assets. So let's use Denmark versus Argentina as an example, which could happen in the round of 16. You might fancy Argentina to go through, but you might really like the looks of Mæhle and also Eriksen. So it enables you to go for some of these players and also countries that you think might be knocked out, but they have some really good fantasy assets anyway, and you want to stock up on them and also potentially get some points that way over those that people will ignore because they're just going for the teams that they think will go through to the next round. So bear that in mind with another possible advantage to using the wildcard in matchday 5. Let's now talk about the 12th man in World Cup Fantasy, and it's different to any other fantasy format. It's quite a different chip, it's quite refreshing, but at the same time, this chip will not be as powerful as the Limitless in UCL Fantasy or the Free Hit in FPL, and the same goes for the Power Captain. So let's break this down. The 12th man will be an external player, someone not in your original 15-man squad, and budget restrictions do not apply. So even if you've used up all of your budget and you have nothing left over, you can still bring in the most expensive player, such as Kylian Mbappe, and he will come in. But remember, you cannot transfer this player out during the match day. You also can't sub them out, and you can't captain them. So bear that in mind. Whoever you choose as your 12th man, be very, very confident that they'll get a return. So maybe Mbappe against Australia in matchday 1 could be a great example. So it's going to be really important to nail that down. Someone who might play for a top nation, or that's just a really good fantasy asset with a favorable fixture. That will be the best kind of possible way to use it. And when is the best time to use it? That will obviously be the other key question. I think any time between match days 1 to 4, where the kind of worst teams still remain in the competition, especially during the group stages, match days 1 to 3. But if I had to narrow it down, I would say either match day 1 or match day 2, and whenever you don't use the 12th man, you could potentially use the Power Captain, as we'll talk about very soon. But that's kind of my feelings on the 12th man, which is a very peculiar chip. I don't think we need to comment on it as much as the wildcard, which for me is the most important chip for sure, and it's the most powerful by some distance in this World Cup fantasy game. The group stages will obviously have the best fixtures because the weakest teams will be left in the competition, and once we get to the knockouts, it's very rare for a game to be one-sided. Obviously, we have some examples like the 7-1 8 years ago, but typically we get some very close games, or it's really tough to call. So even if you back a certain nation to go through, it might be the other one going through, and they might end up actually demolishing the original team you back to advance to the next stage of the competition. So be aware of that, and that's why I think the group stages is the best time to use these remaining chips. And with the 12th man, I would probably target match days 1 or 2. You have some great fixtures in match day 1, such as France versus Australia and Argentina versus Saudi Arabia, and it also allows you to quadruple on a certain nation. So maybe with Argentina you can go for Emi Martinez in goal, Otamendi, Di Maria, as well as Lionel Messi, and not to mention Lautaro Martinez, who's another really good option at 8 million up front. So that's why the 12th man could be really useful in the opening stages of the competition. Either match day 1 or 2, I think, would be the absolute best time to use it. And finally, we have the power captain, which in essence is very simple. The captaincy will be switched automatically to your highest scoring player when you activate this chip. So essentially removes the captaincy from the equation. And there are many different ways to use this chip. And even in the knockout stages, it could be a great time to deploy this booster. So let's talk about this now in terms of when I think the best time to use it is. I would say either match day 1 or 2. And without thinking about the 12th man or the wild card, I would argue that match day 1 is the very best time to deploy this booster. The main reason why I say this is because we don't have that much information going into this World Cup. It's unprecedented. We've never had a World Cup in the middle of the season. So some of these top nations could be knocked out quite early, surprisingly. And just look at all the World Cup reigning champions since 1998. The vast majority of them have been knocked out in the group stages of the following tournament. So once again, with France, who have a really good fixture against Australia, well, it might not go according to plan. And France might even drop points when you don't expect them to. So the power captain will enable you to just forget about the captaincy and just focus on your 15-man squad. And also, even those nations that end up winning the tournament, they might lose their opening game, such as the one against Switzerland for Spain in 2010. So I think the power captain is really useful because you might not be as confident in your captaincy decision in match day 1 because you haven't seen anything of the World Cup yet. So you don't know how it will pan out. You don't have a good idea of who the best countries will be or the best performing players. So the power captain could help you get off to a really good start in match day 1, and then you can push on and build the foundations from there. The reason why I think you could use this chip in the knockout stages is because you will have fewer captaincy options in these match days going forwards. You will have tighter games, some matches you might not be able to call, and you think this is going to be really tough. And where do I get my captaincy returns? Well, the power captain could help you here in the knockout stages, and it automatically goes to your highest scoring player, and you can gain more points at that stage of the competition compared to your competitors. Because let's say, for example, in the group stages, you have so many favorable fixtures, some top nations and players having some great games on paper where you think they could have a really high ceiling here. Well, you will probably have a higher chance of getting captaincy points anyway in the group stages compared to the knockout stages. So by using the power captain in the latest rounds of the competition, you will be able to gain more points and potentially get a double-digit haul, and that could be massive for your World Cup fantasy campaign. So I think the power captain could be really useful later on in the campaign, but I have to say I am personally looking to use it very early on in the competition, but I am open-minded about this for sure. So let me know your thoughts on all these chips, and also when you're looking to use each single one of these and the reasons why. I'd be very curious to see. I think there's definitely a lot of different ways you can play this. The wildcard in either match day 2, 3 or 5. You look at the 12th man, probably match days 1 or 2. And then the power captain, to be fair, you could feasibly use this at any stage of the competition, but I wouldn't recommend using this in the semi-finals or the final, so match day 6 or 7. I think that would be a poor time to probably use any of these chips, but in particular the 12th man. I think the best time to use that would be in the group stages. The wildcard is definitely the most powerful chip by some distance, and the other two chips will be quite fun to use, but they won't be as potent as the Limitless in other fantasy formats and also the free hit. So be aware of it and don't overthink it too much, but definitely the wildcard is something you want to get right for sure, and the other two chips may allow you to gain 10-20 points on your competitors. Now, talking about my current chip strategy, I'm looking to use the 12th man at the moment in Matchday 1, and I'm looking at the likes of Kylian Mbappe for that, and I'll talk about this in my updated draft video, and also the power captain in Matchday 2, but it could easily be the other way around, and I use the power captain in Matchday 1 and the 12th man in Matchday 2. So I'm still looking to decide on that one. And in terms of the wild card, I'm actually looking to use it in Matchday 5 at the moment because it allows me to go for more punts in Matchday 4 and also just focus on the group stages and the other two chips, getting them out of the way, getting those 10-20 extra points for each chip, and then looking to build for the rest of the tournament. And in Matchday 4, of course, we do get unlimited transfers anyway. Of course, there are pros and cons behind each single one of these chips and the way you use it, but that's what I'm looking to do at the moment. The 12th man in Matchday 1, the power captain in Matchday 2, and the wild card in Matchday 5. One possible alternative strategy I'm looking to do for my own squad is using the power captain in Matchday 1, the wildcard in Matchday 2, and the 12th man in Matchday 4 actually, but that could easily change to Matchday 3. I'm still looking to decide on that, and honestly it could be the other way around for any single one of these chips, but I think the wildcard is the key one I'm looking to reflect over. Either Matchday 2 or 5 is the key ones for me, whilst Matchday 3 is another viable alternative. I'm not so sure I want a kind of combat rotation in that way. It all depends on how this tournament kind of evolves throughout, so things can definitely change. My mindset could definitely kind of go from one to the other, but at the moment that's what I'm looking to do. That's my plan, and I think that's also a really good chip strategy for a lot of you. But don't just copy what other people are doing, think about it yourself. What this video is aiming to do is give you a brief overview of all the chips, talking about the best possible times to use it, the pros and cons, and then finally it's up to you to decide what kind of chip strategy you're looking to go for. And at the moment, like I said, that's what I'm looking to do with each single one of those boosters. But thank you very much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it or found it useful, then be sure to smash the like button and subscribe if you're new. Let's get this video to over 300 likes. Let's also push on towards 20,000 subscribers. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram, DylanRCM, and you can also become a patron or a channel member for early access to videos and many more perks. The links are in the description below. The same goes for the World Cup Fantasy League. Be sure to join it. You could see it on the left-hand corner of your screen throughout the majority of this video, and you can also see it in the description. The same goes for the Discord server, where we cover all the fantasy games, including F1 fantasy as well. And thank you very much for all your support. It means a lot. I wish you all the best luck for Matchday 1 and the rest of the World Cup, and I'll see you next time.